Have you ever asked yourself why it's hard to navigate the guitar fretboard and why it sometimes feels like a giant maze in which you're not able to orient yourself? In this video I'm going to try to explain why it often feels counterintuitive to navigate the guitar fretboard and what you can practice to gain a better overview, ensuring you don't lose orientation the next time you're playing the guitar. I'm going to show you a problem that I think is a significant challenge for your body awareness and your visual orientation. And its root cause is quite obvious. I think it's because the guitar is made up of 6 strings and each one is tuned differently. So you might think that this is a very simple observation, but what are the consequences? Let's look at it. We have multiple strings on which we can move up or down to play higher or lower notes. And then of course we can change strings to do that. And of course we can do combinations of that. But how does that look and feel on the guitar? First, let me show you the simplest way to play a scale. In this way the scale feels very intuitive because you move your fingers up the fretboard, creating a lot of movement, and the pitch gets higher as you move. Visually you can rely on the frets, knowing that you're moving up a whole tone step with 2 frets and a half tone step with 1 fret. This almost feels like playing the piano, where there are also low notes on the left side and high notes on the right side. The second most common way to play a G major scale is in a vertical direction. We change strings after playing 2 or 3 notes and we move vertically most of the time. And this way we gain a bit of range and we can play the scale faster. But does that feel intuitive? I would say it does regarding your body awareness, because the pitch is getting higher as you move vertically. But visually it gets harder because there are now different options for moving a whole tone step. Either you move 2 frets up, or you move 1 string up and 3 frets down. And then there's also an exception for the G and the B string, which I'll maybe explain in a later video. The most common way to learn a vertical scale is by using scale patterns. Here it gets more complicated because there's more than 1 scale pattern for 1 scale. But looking at the piano again, you see that there's always just one way to play the G major scale. And also you start to see that there are different directions you can play a scale on the guitar. Now let's make things weird and look at other ways to play the G major scale. In this example I changed strings after playing 1 or 2 notes, and therefore I'm combining a horizontal movement with a vertical one, but this time I'm moving towards the lower frets. Here it gets counterintuitive, I guess. You go lower on the neck and the pitch is getting higher, and you don't have any pattern on which you can rely on visually. Are there more strange ways to play a scale? Sure. Since we had 3 different directions in which we played the scale, we can of course combine them. Here I created a bow by playing horizontally from the 3rd fret up, then vertically and finally returning to the 3rd fret. You can also mirror this, starting an octave higher. And you can gain a lot of range by combining a vertical movement with a horizontal one, like in this example. And then finally there are also open strings you could include. So there are many ways to play the G major scale. And of course G major isn't the only scale. That makes the guitar a very complex instrument, which you have to understand from many perspectives to be able to play it freely. There are even more issues which I will try to explain in later videos. If you're interested in that, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. After discovering all the different ways, what can we do to manage all the information we have to handle while playing? Well, in my experience, it's important to understand the fretboard and what you're playing from many perspectives. There are so many different ways in which you can practice your scales that it surely isn't possible to include them all in this video. However, here are some methods I think are crucial to master your scales. First, understand the basic structure. If you learn a new scale, I would always observe how the scale works in a linear way, meaning how it works on just one string. If you understood that, you can always build a scale anywhere on the fretboard because you understood the basic structure and did not just learn the scale pattern. For example, you could practice a scale in triads or other intervals. And secondly, listen to the sound. Don't treat the musical scale like it's just a visual structure. Of course, there's a lot to learn from visual patterns, but I think the goal should be to speak the scale and not to spot the scale. Well, how can you practice that? One way would be to sing every note before you play it. And then for more intermediate players, you could try to instantly play a melody you know by heart, like something from a hit song or something. And in that way, you'll be able to hear where the next note is. And then finally, practice your scales in large, medium-sized and small structures. When practicing structures, I always try to restrict myself to certain areas on the fretboard. I've already shown you one example. Practicing a scale on one string, that would be a small structure with low complexity. Then you could also pair strings and practice in mini positions by using just groups of 5 to 6 notes per position. The advantage with these positions is that you can link them together to move freely over the fretboard. And then practice your scale patterns and understand them. There are many aspects you could highlight in a scale pattern. For example, you could accent a certain note in the scale, maybe the root note or the third or any other. So we realized that the guitar is a very complex instrument and that there are always many ways in which you can play the same melody. And I also gave you some ideas which you can use to practice your scales. Be aware that this is a very long process and that you can always learn more about fretboard orientation and scale patterns throughout your whole life. If you're interested in more videos like these, please make sure you subscribe to my channel and feel free to follow me on my social media channels. I hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye and see you in the next one.